How is Canada doing when it comes to COVID-19 compared to the rest of the world? Well, it really does depend on how you measure things. The most important measurement, I think, is not the number of new cases, which is where most of the media tends to focus. Oh, we've got so many new cases. All right, how are we doing when it comes to issues like how many people are hospitalized, how many are on ventilators, how many are in intensive care units? On those fronts, we're doing better, but the most important measurement, I would say, is how many people have died as a result of this virus. Well, in that case, we're doing better than we are on case count, but not as well as some other countries. Let me walk you through some of the numbers. I'll compare us to G7 countries. These are some of our closest allies. These are people or countries that we are closely aligned with in economic terms, in defense terms. Canada has about 20 deaths per 100,000 of population. Now, when it comes to the G7, that puts us at third best. We're only ahead of Germany and Japan. Japan has 0.72 deaths per 100,000 of population. Germany has 10.4. But we're doing much better than Britain, which has 60 deaths per 100,000. The United Kingdom has the worst death rate in the G7. Italy has 55 deaths per 100,000, France 43, and the United States 33. Now, if you've been following just general news, you might have thought that the U.S. was one of the worst places on earth. In fact, they're far from it, and we are inching closer to them. It wasn't that long ago that they were well ahead of us. We're getting closer. That's something to be concerned about. But then you look at the numbers within Canada and say, well, where is all of this happening? What is the epicenter? If you look at the actual deaths per 100,000 or the deaths total, well, we're talking about most of them happening in Ontario and Quebec. And then once you break it down further, the real problem is Quebec, and specifically Montreal and Montreal long-term care facilities. Much like Ontario's problem has been long-term care, in Quebec, the issue has been long-term care facilities as well. So we're talking about a population that is high in age, has a lot of comorbidities, as they say, compromised immune systems, other health concerns, and those are the people that are being most affected by this. Let me just run this down for you quickly. When it comes to deaths per 100,000, Newfoundland, New Brunswick, Manitoba, Prince Edward Island, Saskatchewan, and all the territories are less than 1 death per 100,000. Alberta and British Columbia are at 3 deaths per 100,000. And then we get to Nova Scotia at 6.2 deaths per 100,000. The real problems are Ontario and Quebec. Quebec is the real problem. Ontario is below the national average, 16 deaths per 100,000, but Quebec is at 57.4 deaths per 100,000. That is, if we were to put that in the G7, they'd be second only to the United Kingdom. And most of that is happening, as I said, in and around Montreal. Quebec has 63% of the deaths and 22.5% of the population of Canada. Meanwhile, Ontario has 30% of the deaths and 38.8% of the population. And if we were to take Quebec out of this equation, well then, Canada's deaths per 100,000 would drop to below 10. That would put us below Germany. That would put us below Brazil. That would put us below many other countries. So in many ways, Canada's doing pretty well. We do have some hotspots that are problematic, mainly Montreal and Toronto. But really, we're talking about an outbreak that has shut down much of the country that's focused on one city in one province. Maybe it's time that politicians across the country started to say, you know what? The folks that are opening up are on the right track.